I learned the hard way that helping your neighbors can turn into a legal nightmare when a middle-aged woman named Patricia decides she knows better than everyone else in Pine Ridge, Colorado. My name is Vincent Forrester, and for the past 15 years, I've been running a small snow removal business in the mountains just outside Boulder. Nothing fancy, just me, my trusty plow truck, and a handful of residential clients who appreciate cleared driveways when winter dumps 3 feet of powder overnight. I bought my property on Meadowbrook Lane back in 2011, a nice 2-acre spread with a detached garage perfect for storing equipment. The neighborhood was quiet then, mostly older folks who'd lived there since the 70s, and everyone looked out for each other. The HOA existed, sure, but it was barely functional. Old Mr. Henderson ran it from his kitchen table, collecting the minimal yearly dues and organizing the occasional potluck. Nobody cared about fence heights or mailbox colors. We were mountain people, practical folks who understood that surviving Colorado winters meant bending rules and helping neighbors. That all changed 3 years ago when Mr. Henderson passed away, and Patricia Whitmore moved into the massive house at the top of the hill. Patricia was 52, recently divorced with a settlement that could have bought half the neighborhood, and she had opinions about everything. Within 6 months, she'd gotten herself elected HOA president by promising to elevate property values and establish standards befitting a premier mountain community. Most people didn't even show up to vote. I was on a job in Wyoming that week and missed it entirely. Big mistake. The first year under Patricia's reign wasn't too bad. She implemented some cosmetic rules about holiday decorations and lawn maintenance. Annoying, but harmless. Year 2, she started getting aggressive about vehicles. Commercial trucks couldn't be parked in driveways overnight. That hurt me since I kept my plow truck at home, but I managed by parking it slightly behind my garage where it wasn't visible from the street. Then came this winter, and everything fell apart. December hit Pine Ridge like a freight train. The first storm dropped 28 inches in 36 hours, and my phone exploded with calls. I was out for 3 straight days, clearing driveways, helping elderly neighbors get to medical appointments, making sure people could reach the main road. My truck became a familiar sight on every street in the neighborhood, orange lights flashing, blades scraping asphalt at 5 in the morning. That's when Patricia started leaving notes on my windshield. The first one was almost polite. "Mr. Forrester, please be advised that commercial vehicles conducting business on HOA streets requires board approval. Please submit an application at your earliest convenience." I crumpled it up and kept working. Mrs. Chen, 3 houses down, needed to get to dialysis. I wasn't stopping for paperwork. The second note was less friendly. "Final warning. Unauthorized commercial activity on HOA property will result in fines and legal action." I found it tucked under my wiper after clearing the street so the mail truck could get through. The irony wasn't lost on me. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting, held in Patricia's oversized living room with its vaulted ceilings and gas fireplace big enough to roast a pig. About 12 people showed up, mostly the newer residents who'd moved in over the past few years. The old-timers had given up on HOA meetings after Patricia turned them into parliamentary procedure nightmares. "Agenda Item 7, Patricia announced, reading from an actual printed agenda like we were the United Nations. "Unauthorized commercial vehicle operation on HOA streets. Mr. Forrester, you've been observed conducting snow removal business using neighborhood roads without proper authorization." I stood up, still wearing my work boots and fleece because I'd come straight from a job. "Patricia, I live here. These are public streets maintained by the county." I'm not conducting business on HOA property. I'm driving on public roads to reach my clients. The streets within our community are maintained by our dues, she countered, adjusting her reading glasses. Every time your heavy truck drives over them, you're causing wear and damage that we all pay to repair. The county plows these streets, I said, keeping my voice level. They're public right-of-ways. You can't ban me from driving on public streets. Patricia smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Actually, Mr. Forrester, if you read Section 12, Paragraph 4 of our updated CC and Articles, which were voted on and approved last spring, the HOA has the authority to regulate commercial vehicle traffic that creates excessive noise, pollution, or infrastructure damage. Your truck qualifies on all 3 counts. I wasn't at that meeting, I protested. I didn't vote on any updates. Absentee votes are counted as abstentions, which default to the majority decision. It's all very clearly outlined in the bylaws. She shuffled her papers. Now, I'm prepared to offer you a commercial activity permit for a fee of $500 per month, plus a $2,000 deposit against potential road damage. The room went silent. Even her supporters looked uncomfortable with those numbers. That's extortion, I said flatly. That's the cost of doing business in a quality community, Patricia replied. Take it or leave it. But if I see your commercial vehicle on our streets conducting unauthorized business again, you'll be fined $100 per occurrence, and we will place a lien on your property for unpaid fines. I looked around the room for support. A few people wouldn't meet my eyes. Mrs. Chen wasn't there, too frail to leave her house on cold nights. The Robinsons, whose driveway I'd cleared a dozen times for free, studied their phones. Only old Tom Webster, who'd lived here since 1974, spoke up. This is ridiculous, Patricia. Vince helps people. He cleared my driveway during that storm last week and wouldn't take a dime. That's very charitable, Patricia said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. But this organization has rules, and rules apply to everyone equally. No exceptions. I left without another word. There was no point arguing with someone who'd already made up her mind. I went home, cracked open a beer, and stared at the mountain of paperwork on my kitchen table. Legal bills, insurance, equipment maintenance, fuel costs. My margins were already thin. $6,000 a year to Patricia's little fiefdom would sink me. The next morning I got up at 4:30 like always. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, another 8 inches, and my schedule was packed. I fired up the truck, let it warm up, and headed toward Mrs. Chen's house. Her driveway was on Meadowbrook, right in the heart of the HOA territory. I was halfway there when I saw Patricia's Mercedes parked sideways across the street, hazard lights blinking. She was standing in the road wearing a puffy white jacket and holding her phone up like she was filming. I stopped the truck and rolled down my window. You're blocking the road, Patricia. And you're operating a commercial vehicle in violation of HOA regulations, she called back. I'm documenting this for our records. You're being fined $100. If you proceed to conduct business, that's another $100 fine. Mrs. Chen needs her driveway cleared. She has a medical appointment. Mrs. Chen can hire a different service, one that follows the rules. Patricia was practically glowing with self-righteousness. Or she can fill out a hardship exemption form, which the board will review at our next quarterly meeting in March. It's January, I said. Yes, it is. She didn't blink. I sat there idling for a full minute, hands gripping the steering wheel. Every instinct told me to just push past her, do my job, help my neighbor. But I'd seen HOA horror stories, people who lost their homes over unpaid fines and legal fees. Patricia had money for lawyers. I had a truck payment and a mortgage. I put the truck in reverse and went home. The phone calls started around 8. Mrs. Chen, worried and apologetic. The Robinsons, suddenly needing help now that the storm had worsened. 3 other clients on Meadowbrook and Pine Ridge Court. I had to tell each one the same thing. I couldn't work in the HOA area anymore. They could meet me at the end of the main road, outside HOA boundaries, and I'd clear their driveways from there, but I couldn't drive my commercial truck through the neighborhood. Most people were understanding, if frustrated. A few got angry, as if it was my fault. Mrs. Chen cried, which broke my heart. I offered to shovel her driveway by hand, but she said no, she didn't want me getting in trouble. By the end of the week, I'd lost 6 regular clients. Word spread fast in a small community. Vince can't work in Pine Ridge anymore. Some people thought I'd lost my license. Others heard I'd been arrested. Patricia's version, shared at her book club and yoga class, was that I'd been operating illegally, and the HOA had heroically shut me down to protect the community. I focused on clients outside the HOA and tried not to think about my neighbors struggling with snow-blocked driveways and icy walkways. It wasn't my problem anymore. Patricia had made that clear. Then came the second week of January, and the storm everyone had been dreading. The National Weather Service issued warnings 3 days in advance. A massive system moving down from Canada, expected to dump anywhere from 3 to 5 feet of snow across the Colorado Rockies over a 48-hour period. Temperatures would drop below 0. Winds would create drifts 10 feet high. Local officials were advising people to stock up on supplies and stay home. I spent 2 days prepping equipment, checking the blade, changing oil, making sure I had spare belts and filters. My clients outside the HOA were paying premium rates for guaranteed service. I'd be working around the clock, but the money would be good. The storm hit on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, Pine Ridge was buried. My own driveway had 3 feet of snow, and it took me an hour to clear enough space to get the truck out. The main roads were a mess. County plows were running, but they couldn't keep up. Side streets were impassable, including Meadowbrook Lane and all the residential streets in the HOA. I worked 18 hours straight Wednesday, clearing driveways in the county areas and the unincorporated properties outside Pine Ridge. I made good money, but I was exhausted. When I finally got home around midnight, I could barely see my house. Snow had drifted against my garage door and my front walk was completely buried. Thursday morning, my phone rang at 6. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Vincent Forrester?" A woman's voice, clipped and professional. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Susan Montgomery with Mountain View School District. I'm calling about the bus routes in Pine Ridge. Our driver can't access Meadowbrook Lane or any of the interior streets. The snow hasn't been cleared. We have 18 children who need pickup for school today." I rubbed my eyes, still half asleep. "You should call the county. They handle the main roads." "The county only plows the primary routes. Meadowbrook Lane and the interior streets are private roads maintained by the HOA. We have a contract with them to ensure bus access." "But our driver says the roads are completely blocked. Some areas have 5-foot drifts." "I don't work for the HOA," I said carefully. There was a pause. "Our records show you've cleared those streets before. In fact, we have you listed as the primary contractor for snow removal in that area." "That was before. The HOA banned my truck from their streets. You'll need to call Patricia Whitmore. She's the HOA president." Another pause, longer this time. "We've been calling Miss Whitmore since 5 this morning. She's not answering." I almost laughed. Of course she wasn't. "Not my problem anymore. Sorry." I hung up. The The phone rang again 10 minutes later, the superintendent this time sounding stressed. I gave him the same answer. Then the county called, asking if I could do an emergency clear of the Pine Ridge streets. I explained the HOA situation. The county dispatcher was sympathetic, but couldn't help. Private streets, private dispute, nothing they could do. By noon, I was getting calls from neighbors. Not clients asking for help, but people demanding to know why the streets weren't cleared. Apparently, Patricia had been telling everyone that the HOA had everything under control, that professional snow removal was arranged and scheduled. She'd been collecting special assessment fees all winter for snow removal services. Services she'd never actually contracted because she'd driven me out and no other company wanted to deal with her. Tom Webster called around too. "Vince, we've got a real problem here. Nobody can get out. The mail can't get through. Medical services can't reach us. Some folks are running low on medications, and those kids can't get to school. Did you call Patricia? She's not answering anyone. Some people went to her house. She's home, her car's in the garage, but she won't come to the door. I think she realized she screwed up and she's hiding." I should have felt vindicated, I really should have. But mostly I just felt tired. "Tom, I can't help. If I drive my truck onto HOA streets, Patricia will find me into bankruptcy. She made the rules. Let her deal with the consequences." "This isn't about Patricia anymore," Tom said quietly. "It's about people who need help. Mrs. Chen hasn't had her medication delivered. The Robinson's son has asthma, and they're running out of his inhaler refills. There's an 80-year-old woman on Pine Ridge Court who's on oxygen, and the medical supply company can't reach her house to change her tank." I closed my eyes. "That's not fair, Tom." "No, it's not, but it's the situation we're in." I spent an hour pacing my house, arguing with myself. This wasn't my fault. I hadn't created this situation. Patricia had banned me, threatened me, cost me clients and income. Why should I bail her out? Why should I risk more fines and legal trouble to fix her mistake? Because people were suffering. Because Mrs. Chen needed her medication. Because kids couldn't get to school. Because an elderly woman might run out of oxygen. I grabbed my keys and headed for the truck. Meadowbrook Lane looked like the surface of an alien planet. Snow had drifted in waves across the pavement, some sections nearly level, others with peaks 6 feet high. My truck pushed through slowly, blade down, orange lights spinning. It took 3 passes to clear a path wide enough for the school bus. I worked my way through the neighborhood systematically, clearing the main routes first, then the side streets. People came out of their houses to wave and thank me. A few tried to hand me cash, which I refused. This wasn't about money. I was clearing Pine Ridge Court, almost done, when Patricia's Mercedes appeared behind me. She laid on the horn, long and loud. I ignored her and kept working. The horn continued, angry and persistent. Finally, I finished the pass, pulled over, and got out of the truck. Patricia was out of her car, phone in hand, recording again. "You're in violation of HOA regulations. I have you on video. You're going to be fined for every street you've cleared." "Great," I said. "Send me the bill." "I absolutely will. This is trespassing. This is property damage. This is helping people who you abandoned." I cut her off. "Where's the snow removal service you promised everyone? Where's the professional company you collected assessment fees for?" Her face flushed red. "That's none of your business. You made it my business when you banned me from doing my job. You wanted control. Congratulations. You've got it. Now everyone knows what your control looks like. I'll have you arrested," she sputtered. "For what?" "Plowing snow off public streets. Call the cops. I'll wait." She actually did it. She dialed 911 right there, standing in the middle of the street, and reported that I was trespassing with a commercial vehicle. The dispatcher must have told her it wasn't an emergency because her face got even redder. She hung up and called the non-emergency line instead. A sheriff's deputy showed up 40 minutes later. I'd finished clearing the streets by then and was parked in my own driveway, making notes on my phone about fuel costs and hours worked. The deputy, a young guy named Morrison, looked tired and amused in equal measure. "You Vincent Forrester." "That's me." "Got a complaint from a Patricia Whitmore. Says you're operating a commercial vehicle in violation of HOA rules." "That's accurate," he sighed. "You understand I can't enforce HOA regulations, right? That's civil stuff. You'd have to sue each other or whatever it is HOA people do." "I understand." "She also said you're trespassing, but these are county-maintained roads, so that's not really a thing either." He glanced at his notepad. "Look, between you and me, I've taken 3 calls today about Pine Ridge. Medical access issues, school bus problems, elderly residents in distress." "You the guy who cleared the streets?" "Yeah." "Then unofficially, thanks. Officially, try not to make my job harder by antagonizing angry HOA ladies, okay?" He grinned and walked back to his patrol car. Patricia was waiting by her mailbox, clearly expecting the deputy to arrest me or at least ticket me. When he drove past her with a casual wave, I thought she might actually explode. The school bus made it through that afternoon. The medical supply company delivered Mrs. Chen's medication and changed the oxygen tank on Pine Ridge Court. The mail got delivered. Life returned to something resembling normal, and then the fines started arriving. Patricia sent them via certified mail, which I had to sign for at the post office. $300 for January 15th, 100 per street cleared. Another $300 for the second clearing I'd done the following day when more snow fell. Then a late fee because I hadn't paid within 72 hours. Then a lien notice, informing me that unpaid fines would be attached to my property. I contacted a lawyer, spent $200 I didn't have for a consultation, and learned that HOA law in Colorado is complicated. The HOA did have the right to regulate commercial vehicle use in some circumstances. Whether their specific restrictions were legal would require a court case, which would cost thousands of dollars and take months or years to resolve. In the meantime, the fines would keep accumulating and the lien was valid. I was trapped. February brought more snow and more problems. I stopped clearing the HOA streets even when people begged. I couldn't afford the fines. Patricia had made her point. She'd won. The school bus stopped coming to Pine Ridge. The district decided it was too unreliable. Parents had to drive their kids to the main road, a half-mile walk through snow, to catch the bus there. Some parents just started driving their kids to school themselves when the roads were passable enough. Medical services started refusing calls to Pine Ridge addresses. Too many incidents of ambulances getting stuck or being unable to reach patients. The fire department sent a letter to all residents warning that emergency response times could not be guaranteed during winter weather. Property values started dropping. 2 houses went up for sale in March. Neither one got any offers. The breaking point came in April after a late-season storm dumped 18 inches right before Easter weekend. The neighborhood was a mess again, and Patricia was nowhere to be seen. Turned out she'd gone to Cabo for a week, posting pictures on Facebook of herself drinking margaritas on the beach while her neighbors shoveled their driveways by hand. That's when people started asking questions. Specifically, where did the snow removal assessment fees go? Patricia had collected $60 per household per month all winter, claiming it was for professional snow removal services. With 43 houses in the HOA, that was over $10,000. Tom Webster requested a financial review at the April HOA meeting. Patricia refused, saying the board had already approved all expenditures and there was no need for additional oversight. Tom pushed harder and other residents backed him up. Patricia got defensive, then angry, then she adjourned the meeting early and left. Tom called me that night. "Vince, I think she stole the money. You can't prove that." "Maybe not, but I can make her show the books. HOA law requires financial transparency. She has to provide documentation if members request it formally. I'm organizing a petition." 3 days later, Tom had signatures from 35 households demanding a full financial audit of HOA accounts. Patricia had no choice but to comply. She scheduled a special meeting for April 28th and promised to bring all financial records. She didn't show up. I attended the meeting because Tom asked me to. The crowd was larger than I'd ever seen. At least 40 people crammed into Tom's living room since Patricia wouldn't let them use her house. Everyone was angry. People had lost money, time, and peace of mind over Patricia's dictatorship. Tom called Patricia's house. No answer. He drove over there. Her car was gone. The house was dark. We filed a police report the next day. Turns out Patricia Whitmore had drained the HOA bank accounts, approximately $47,000, and disappeared. The snow removal fees were just the tip of the iceberg. She'd been inflating expenses and pocketing the difference for 2 years. Fake invoices for landscaping services, phantom legal fees, made-up maintenance contracts. She'd turned the HOA into her personal piggy bank. The sheriff's department opened an investigation. They tracked Patricia to Phoenix, where she'd rented a condo under her maiden name. She was arrested 3 weeks later on charges of theft, embezzlement, and fraud. Because the amount exceeded $20,000, it was a Class 3 felony in Colorado, carrying a potential sentence of 4 to 12 years in prison. I testified at her preliminary hearing in June. The prosecutor asked me to explain how Patricia's actions had affected the community and my business. I laid it all out. The lost clients, the fines, the lien on my property, the emergency situations that had gone unaddressed because she'd banned the one person actually willing to clear the streets. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that HOA regulations were a civil matter and had no bearing on the criminal charges. The judge wasn't buying it. He noted that Patricia had collected money specifically for snow removal services, failed to provide those services, kept the money, and actively prevented alternatives from being available. That showed intent to defraud, which supported the theft charges. The trial happened in September. I didn't attend most of it, but Tom kept me updated. The prosecution's case was solid. Bank records, fake invoices, testimony from residents who'd paid fees for services never rendered. Patricia's defense was that she'd been planning to hire contractors, but hadn't gotten around to it yet, and the money was still HOA funds, just temporarily in her personal account for safekeeping. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came in October. The judge gave Patricia 6 years in state prison, plus restitution of $47,000 to the HOA, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in Colorado. He noted that she'd held a position of trust and had exploited it for personal gain, causing significant harm to her community. The HOA dissolved after that. Nobody wanted to deal with it anymore. The streets reverted to county maintenance, which meant they weren't plowed as frequently, but at least it was consistent and nobody was stealing money. Property owners were individually responsible for their own driveways and walkways. It was actually better that way, more honest. I got my business back. Most of my old clients returned. apologetic and grateful. Mrs. Chen cried again, happy tears this time when I cleared her driveway that first November snowfall. The Robinsons paid me double my usual rate as an apology for not standing up to Patricia. I told them it was unnecessary, but they insisted. Tom Webster organized a neighborhood barbecue in July after everything settled down. No HOA, no rules, just neighbors appreciating each other. Someone made a joke about electing me HOA president of the dissolved HOA, and everyone laughed. I declined, obviously. The lien on my property was removed as part of the restitution settlement. The county prosecutor's office helped expedite that since it was tied to the criminal case. I never saw a dime of the money Patricia stole, but I didn't expect to. The HOA funds went back to the HOA, which used them to pay off debts and cover legal expenses before dissolving. Whatever was left got divided among the members as a final distribution. I got about $300. I spent it on a new snow blower for Mrs. Chen. I still run my snow removal business, still drive the same truck with the orange lights, still get up at 4:30 when storms roll through. The difference now is that nobody questions whether I'm allowed to help people. Nobody threatens fines or liens. Nobody tries to control what I do on public streets. I learned a lot from the whole experience. I learned that HOAs can be weapons in the wrong hands, that good intentions matter less than actual results, and that sometimes the only way to fight petty tyranny is to let it collapse under its own weight. I also learned that communities are stronger when people help each other directly instead of hiding behind rules and regulations. Pine Ridge is a better place now without the HOA. Property values actually recovered once word spread that the organization was dissolved. People liked knowing they wouldn't have to deal with arbitrary restrictions or risk their homes over the color of their mailbox. The neighborhood became what it should have been all along, a collection of individuals who chose to live near each other and help out when needed, without some self-appointed authority figure extracting fees and demanding compliance. I ran into Patricia once more, actually, about 2 years later. She'd been paroled after serving 4 years, got out early for good behavior. I was getting coffee at a shop in Boulder, and there she was, looking older and harder, hair gone gray, wearing a retail store uniform. She saw me and froze. I could have said something cutting. Could have reminded her of everything she'd put me and everyone else through. But she already looked defeated. Prison had broken whatever self-righteous confidence she'd once carried like armor. "Vince," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I owe everyone an apology. I was wrong." "About everything," I nodded. "Yeah, you were. I thought I was making things better, making the neighborhood better, but I was just trying to control everything because my life felt out of control after my divorce." She laughed bitterly. "Turned out I'm not great at control either." "No, you weren't." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw an actual human being instead of a tyrant with a clipboard. "I heard you still plow the streets, that people trust you. I do my job, I help where I can. That's more than I ever did." She picked up her coffee, hands shaking slightly. "I am sorry, Vince, for whatever that's worth now." "It's worth something," I said, because it was. Not enough to erase what she'd done, but enough to acknowledge that people can change or at least recognize their mistakes. She left, and I never saw her again. I heard later she moved to Wyoming, trying to start fresh somewhere people didn't know her story. I hope she found whatever she was looking for, though I doubted it would be easy. As for me, I'm still in Pine Ridge, still clearing driveways and helping neighbors. The winters are hard, but the work is good. I know every street, every driveway, every resident who needs extra help. When storms hit, I'm the first one out and the last one done. Not because I have to be, but because I choose to be. That's the real difference between me and Patricia. She saw the neighborhood as something to control. I see it as something to serve. She wanted power. I want people to be safe and warm and able to get where they need to go. The school bus runs through Pine Ridge every day now, stopping at designated corners to pick up kids who walk from their houses bundled in winter coats and snow boots. The county plows the main roads, and I supplement with the side streets when needed. Medical services respond to calls without hesitation. Mail gets delivered. Life goes on. Sometimes, I think about what would have happened if I just paid Patricia's extortion fees, if I'd swallowed my pride and forked over $6,000 a year for the privilege of working in my own neighborhood. Would it have prevented the whole disaster? Would Patricia have continued stealing, just more quietly? Would the community have ever discovered the truth? I don't think so. Tyrants don't stop being tyrants when you enable them. They just get bolder. Patricia would have escalated, found new ways to extract money and exert control. By standing up to her, by refusing to participate in her corrupt system, I forced the situation into the open where people could see what was really happening. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. People suffered in the short term. But in the long term, the neighborhood is healthier without the infection of Patricia's HOA. Tom Webster and I still talk about it sometimes, sitting on his porch with beers, watching snow fall over the mountains. He says I'm a hero for standing up to Patricia. I tell him I just did what made sense. He says that's what heroes always say. I tell him he's been watching too many movies, but maybe he's a little bit right. Not about the hero part, but about doing what makes sense. Sometimes the obvious solution is the right one. Help people who need help. Don't steal from your neighbors and don't try to control things that aren't yours to control. Simple rules, obvious rules, but apparently difficult for some people to follow. The young families who moved into the houses that went up for sale during Patricia's reign are good people. They heard about the HOA disaster before buying and were actually relieved it was dissolved. Nobody wants to deal with arbitrary restrictions and power-hungry board members. They want to live their lives, raise their kids, and have neighbors who look out for each other. That's what we have now in Pine Ridge. Not a perfect community, but an honest one. When snow falls, I plow. When someone needs help, we show up. When problems arise, we talk to each other directly instead of filing complaints with some bureaucratic organization. It's funny how it took Patricia's criminality to teach us what we should have known all along. The best communities are built on trust and mutual aid, not rules and regulations. HOAs claim to protect property values and maintain standards, but what they often do is create little fiefdoms where petty people can exercise petty power. I'm not saying all HOAs are bad. I'm sure somewhere there's an HOA run by reasonable people who actually serve their community's interests. But I haven't seen one. And after everything that happened with Patricia, I'm deeply skeptical of any organization that claims to know what's best for everyone while demanding money and compliance. My business has grown significantly in the past few years. I bought a second truck and hired 2 part-time employees for the busy winter months. We cover 3 counties now, clearing driveways and parking lots and private roads. Commercial clients, residential clients, even some municipal contracts. I never advertise. It's all word of mouth, people recommending us to friends and neighbors. Someone asked me once why I don't form a company with a flashy name, maybe expand into landscaping or general contracting. I told them I'm happy doing what I do. I'm good at it. I help people. I make enough money to live comfortably and save for retirement. What more do I need? That's another lesson from the Patricia situation. More isn't always better. Patricia wanted more control, more money, more power, and it destroyed her. I want to do good work and sleep well at night. That's enough. Mrs. Chen passed away last spring, peacefully in her sleep at 92. Her daughter called to thank me for taking care of her mother's driveway all those years, said it gave Mrs. Chen independence and dignity in her final years. That meant more to me than any amount of money Patricia could have extorted. The neighborhood held a memorial service for Mrs. Chen in Tom's backyard. 50 people showed up, sharing stories and memories. Someone mentioned how Mrs. Chen had been one of the first to suffer when Patricia banned me from the streets, how she couldn't get her medication delivered. Someone else talked about how I'd offered to shovel her driveway by hand rather than leave her stranded. Tom raised his beer and said, "To Mrs. Chen, and to neighbors who actually give a damn." Everyone drank to that. I thought about Patricia in prison while everyone celebrated Mrs. Chen's life. What a waste. Patricia could have been part of this community, could have been respected and valued. Instead, she chose control over connection, and it cost her everything. The last I heard, she was working at a call center in Cheyenne, living in a studio apartment, struggling to rebuild any kind of life. Part of me feels sorry for her. Most of me doesn't. She made her choices. She hurt people deliberately. The consequences were appropriate. As for me, I'll be here as long as the snow falls and people need help. I'll keep my truck running, my blade sharp, and my phone charged. When storms roll in from Canada and bury Pine Ridge under 3 feet of powder, I'll be out there at 4:30 in the morning, orange lights spinning, clearing the way for school buses and medical services and neighbors who just want to get to work. No HOA required. No permission needed. Just a man with a truck doing what needs to be done. That's the way it should be. That's the way it will stay. And if anyone ever tries to change it, well, they saw what happened to Patricia. Sometimes the best response to tyranny is simply refusing to participate and letting the whole corrupt system collapse under its own weight. Pine Ridge learned that lesson the hard way. But we learned it, and we're better for it now. The mountains are beautiful in winter when the snow is fresh, and the sky is clear, and the neighborhoods are safe because people help each other without being told. That's the Colorado I love. That's the community I choose to serve. Patricia tried to control that and failed. I just try to support it and succeed. The difference is everything.